The sun hung low over the alien city, painting the tall glass towers in shades of gold. Down below, the grand market was alive with sound. Alien merchants shouted prices. Music floated through the air, and the smell of strange food mixed with the scent of hot metal from repair shops. Daniel moved carefully through the crowd, a small box of tools rattling in his hands. He had been working since dawn, fixing broken heaters and damaged scanners, hoping to make enough credits to pay. For his rent, he passed a stall selling crystal fruit, its colors shifting under the light. He glanced at the price tag and sighed. It was worth more than his entire daily earnings. Still, he kept walking, head down. He knew this place, knew the way the rich walked here, like they owned the air itself. Then, the crowd shifted. People stepped aside, their heads lowering as a tall alien woman in a shimmering silver gown walked through. Her long hair glowed faintly. Her skin had the soft shimmer of someone who had never worked a day in her life. 4 guards followed her, each in polished armor. They carried expensive weapons. Daniel could tell just by looking. In her hand, she held a glowing bag, smooth, gold-plated, and humming with an inner light. It wasn't just a bag. It was a symbol. Of her status, rumor said it was crafted by the royal jewelers and worth more than a small house. She walked with her chin high, her gaze sweeping the market like it was her private garden. Daniel stepped aside to let her pass, but the crowd behind him pushed forward. Someone bumped into him, and before he knew it, his shoulder hit hers. The drink in her other hand spilled across her gown. A sharp gasp escaped the crowd. She turned to face him, her golden eyes narrowing. Her voice rang out clear and sharp. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The market went silent. Everyone was watching. Her gaze dropped to his worn clothes, his rough hands, and the box of old tools he carried. Her lips curled, and she said it, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "This bag is worth more than you." A few in the crowd laughed. Others shook their heads. Daniel felt the heat rise to his face. He wanted to answer back, but what was the point? Talking to people like her was like shouting at a wall. He simply stepped back, muttered an apology, and turned to leave. But he didn't get far. A loud, low boom shook the ground. At first, Daniel thought it was a thunderclap, but the air was too clear for that. Then came the second blast, closer this time. The market erupted in chaos. Merchants grabbed their goods. Parents pulled their children close. The sound of screaming filled the air. From the corner of his eye, Daniel saw shadows moving fast between the stalls, figures in dark armor carrying weapons he didn't recognize. The guards around the arras raised their rifles. Shouting commands, the attackers didn't slow. In the confusion, Daniel lost sight of her. He ducked behind a stall, his instincts from years of surviving undangerous. Streets kicking in, but then he saw it near the center of the market. The heiress was on the ground, part of a collapsed stall trapping her legs. One of her guards was already dead beside her. The others were retreating, firing wildly as they backed away. She was shouting at them to help her, but none of them turned back. For a moment, Daniel thought about leaving her. After all, she had just humiliated him in front of everyone. She probably wouldn't even remember his face. But something in him refused to walk away. He didn't care about her money, her bag, or her attitude. He couldn't watch someone die when he could do something about it. He dropped his box of tools and ran, weaving between fleeing shoppers. The heat from a nearby fire burned his skin as he pushed forward. He grabbed a metal bar from the ground and used it to pry the stall off her legs. She looked up at him, eyes wide with shock. "Why? Are you helping me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't answer. He just pulled her to her feet. But the moment they stood, a dark figure stepped into their path. Its face was hidden behind a mask, and its weapon was already aimed. The heiress clutched her glowing bag like it was her life. The figure spoke in a rough voice. "Hand over the bag, and maybe I'll let you live." Daniel's heart pounded. He could see more shadows moving in from the sides. The market wasn't just under attack. This weren't here for random violence. They were here for her. The heiress looked at Daniel. Her earlier insult forgotten, there was fear in her golden eyes now, and for the first time, she didn't seem so untouchable. And Daniel realized something. If he stayed, he'd have to fight. If he ran, she'd be dead within seconds. He tightened his grip on the metal bar and stepped forward. Daniel stood his ground, his eyes locked on the masked attacker. The smell of smoke and burning stalls filled the air. The crowd had almost cleared out, leaving behind an echo of footsteps and cries fading into the distance. The heiress clung to her glowing bag as if letting go would kill her, but her hands trembled. The attacker's weapon didn't waver. Daniel didn't have a plan. Only the cold weight of the metal bar in his hands and the pounding of his heart. He stepped slightly to the side, drawing the attacker's focus away from her legs and onto him. That split second was enough. With a sharp motion, Daniel swung the bar down hard, hitting the weapon and knocking it from the attacker's grip. The alien hissed in pain, stumbling back. "Run," Daniel said. Grabbing the heiress's arm, she resisted for a heartbeat, her pride fighting her fear. But when another blast shook the market and sent sparks raining from a burning stall, she finally moved. They ran together, weaving through the broken remains of the market. Daniel's breath came fast, but he kept scanning for danger. Behind them, heavy footsteps followed. The attackers weren't giving up. The heiress's expensive gown caught on a splintered beam. Slowing her down, Daniel yanked it free, tearing the fabric without hesitation. She gasped in outrage, but didn't stop moving. He guided her toward a narrow side path between two storage units. The shadows there were thick, and the noise of the market attack faded slightly, just as they reached the middle of the passage. A figure dropped from the roof, blocking their way. This one was taller, with glowing red eyes under a cracked visor. It drew a curved blade that shimmered in the dim light. The heiress froze, her fingers tightening on her bag. Daniel stepped in front of her without thinking. His voice was calm, even though his chest felt like it would burst. "Stay behind me," he said. He ducked under the first swing. The blade slicing air where his head had been, he struck with the metal bar. Hitting the attacker's ribs, the alien grunted but didn't fall. The fight was fast and clumsy. Daniel wasn't trained, but he knew how to survive. He kept close, denying the attacker space to swing. The heiress backed against the wall, her breathing sharp and fast. In a desperate move, Daniel grabbed the attacker's wrist and slammed it against the wall until the blade dropped. Without pausing, he kicked it away into the shadows. The alien hissed and lunged, but Daniel used the bar to strike hard at the side of its head. This time, it fell, not moving. "Come on," he said, not looking back. They ran again, this time toward the larger street ahead. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic, but the danger wasn't over. Shouts echoed behind them, and the sound of boots on metal told Daniel more attackers were coming. They ducked behind a line of stacked crates, Daniel's chest heaving. He checked her for injuries, finding a shallow cut on her leg and a scrape on her arm. She tried to brush him off, muttering, "I'm fine," but her voice shook for the first time since he met her. She wasn't holding her head high. She looked at him as if she was trying to understand something. "You could have left me," she said quietly. "Why didn't you?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the street, looking for their next move. "Because you needed help," he said finally. His tone was flat, as if it was the only answer that made sense. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to thank him, but the sound of a nearby door slamming shut cut her off. Daniel pulled her toward it. The door led into a dim storage space filled with old parts and tools. It smelled of rust and oil. He closed it behind them and moved a crate in front of it. They stood in silence, listening to muffled voices outside. The attackers were close. Searching the area, Daniel motioned for her to stay quiet. He moved to a small, dusty window and peeked out, counting at least 3 more masked figures scanning the streets. The heiress clutched her bag tighter, whispering, "They're after this." Her voice was low but urgent. Daniel glanced at the glowing object. He didn't know what was inside. But from the way the attackers fought, it was worth killing for. "Then we need to move before they find us," he said. He spotted a back exit leading into another alley. He checked it, finding it clear, and waved for her to follow. They slipped out into the night air, the temperature cooler now, the cities. Tall towers loomed above them, their lights flickering against the smoky haze. Somewhere far off, sirens began to wail. Daniel led her through twisting backstreets, keeping to the shadows. Every so often, she would stumble, unused to the uneven ground, and he would steady her without saying a word. For someone who had insulted him less than an hour ago. She was strangely quiet now. Finally, they reached a wider street where the noise of the attack faded into the distance. Daniel slowed, scanning the area for threats. The heiress stopped. Beside him, her chest rising and falling quickly. She looked at him, and for the first time, her gaze held no arrogance, only confusion. "You're not what I expected," she said softly. Daniel didn't respond. He didn't have the time or patience for whatever she was trying to figure out. All he knew was that the night wasn't over, and danger was still following them, somewhere behind them. A voice shouted orders. The sound carried in the air, cold and sharp. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew they had only minutes before the next fight. "Stay close," he said, and they moved again. Disappearing into the maze of the city, the streets grew narrower as Daniel led her deeper into the city's underbelly. Neon signs flickered above, throwing shifting colors over wet metal walls. The air here smelled of oil, smoke, and something rotten. The heiress stepped carefully, her torn gown dragging across puddles. Each step sounding too loud in the silence. Daniel moved fast, but not recklessly. His eyes scanned every shadow, every rooftop. He knew these back routes. He had used them to hide from debt collectors and patrols in the past. Now they were their only chance. They turned a corner. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Daniel glanced back and saw dark shapes moving closer. 3 at least. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her into a half-open doorway. The room beyond was pitch black, filled with the faint hum of abandoned machinery. "Stay low," he whispered. They crouched behind a large metal tank. The footsteps grew louder. The attackers' voices were strange, muffled by their masks. One of them stopped right outside. The heiress's breathing quickened. Daniel put a hand over her mouth gently, his touch firm but careful. The door creaked. As it was pushed open, a beam of light swept across the room. Daniel's muscles tensed. The shadow of a weapon crossed the wall just meters away. For a long moment, there was only the sound of dripping water somewhere in the darkness. Then the light turned away, and the door shut again. He waited. Counting the seconds in his head, when the noise faded, he let go of her. She exhaled shakily, clutching her bag as if it were the only solid thing left in her world. They moved again. Taking a narrow passage that led to the industrial docks, the air here was colder, touched by the sea breeze. Huge cargo crates towered over them like silent giants. The area was almost empty. But Daniel knew emptiness didn't mean safety. Suddenly, a faint metallic sound came from above. He looked up and caught a glimpse of movement on the catwalk cedars taking positions. He swore under his breath and pulled her toward a stack of crates. A shot rang out, the blast hitting the metal just inches from his head. They ran between the containers, the sound of weapons fire chasing them. Sparks flew as shots hit the walls. Daniel led her through a gap barely wide enough for 2 people. Forcing her to squeeze through, she gasped as her bag scraped against the rusted edges. But she didn't let go. At the far end of the dock, they reached a high fence topped with jagged metal. The heiress looked at it, then at him. "We can't." "Climb that," she said. Daniel didn't answer. He grabbed a broken ladder lying nearby, propped it against the fence, and climbed first. The metal groaned under his weight. He reached down and pulled her up, ignoring her protests. When they were halfway over, shouts came from behind. The attackers had found their trail again. One of them fired, the shot hitting the ladder and sending vibrations through the metal. The heiress almost slipped, but Daniel caught her, his grip like iron. They dropped down on the other side, landing hard on the wet pavement. For a moment, neither spoke. Both were breathing hard. Daniel scanned the area and spotted an old maintenance. "Tunnel ahead, in there," he said. She hesitated, glancing at the dark entrance, but followed. The tunnel was damp and smelled of rust. The walls dripped with condensation. Their footsteps echoed in the confined space. The heiress walked close to him now, no longer keeping that careful distance she had before. Her voice was quieter when she spoke. "You know these streets too well for someone." Ordinary Daniel didn't reply. The less she knew, the better, but inside, he felt a strange shift. She wasn't speaking to him like before, not as if he were beneath her, but as if she was trying to understand him. They reached the other end of the tunnel and stepped into a quieter part of the city. The buildings here were older, windows boarded up, lamps flickering. No one seemed to notice them. For now, the streets were empty, but Daniel knew this was only a pause, not safety. The people hunting her wouldn't stop until they had the bag. And maybe her life, too. She looked at him, her golden eyes softer now. "You could have left me twice already," she said. "Why risk yourself?" Daniel's gaze stayed on the road ahead, because walking away would mean living with it. He said, somewhere in the distance, a sharp whistle echoed, a signal. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew the hunt was far from over, and the night still had more danger waiting for them. Daniel and the heiress moved quietly through the dark streets, their footsteps soft on the cracked pavement. The city around them was asleep, but danger was close, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Daniel felt the weight of the glowing bag pressing against her side, a constant reminder of what they were running from as they turned a corner. A sudden noise made them freeze, a faint click, like metal against metal. Daniel's hand moved to the small knife at his belt. Ready, from the darkness, stepped a figure. Not one of their attackers, but someone else, an old man with tired eyes and a face lined by years of hardship. He raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "You're running from more than just enemies," he said quietly. "That bag you carry holds secrets. That could change everything." The heiress narrowed her eyes, clutching the bag tighter. "Who are you?" she asked, voice sharp. The man looked at Daniel, then back at her. "I was once part of the royal guard, but I left when I learned the truth about the crown's plans. They want to use what's inside that bag to control more than just this city." He paused, his gaze steady. "If you trust me, I can help you get to safety." Daniel studied the man carefully, unsure if this was a trap. But the urgency in his voice felt real. The heiress glanced at Daniel, silently asking for his thoughts. He nodded slowly. "We don't have many options," he said. "Lead the way." They followed the old man through winding alleys and hidden doors until they reached a safe house, a small building disguised by vines and shadows. Inside, the walls were covered with maps and strange symbols. The man moved to a table and laid the bag down carefully, unlocking its glowing latch. Inside were thin data crystals and a small device pulsing with blue light. Daniel and the heiress watched as the man explained. "These contain information about the royal family's darkest secrets, plans for war, betrayal, and control." He looked at the heiress. Your family will stop at nothing to keep this hidden." Suddenly, the safe house door slammed open, and masked figures rushed inside. The old man shouted a warning, and Daniel grabbed the heiress, pushing her behind a heavy metal cabinet. Bullets flew, sparks flew from the walls, and the fight was fierce. Daniel used everything he had, his strength, his quick thinking, to protect them. The heiress watched in shock as this ordinary human became her only shield. When the attackers finally fled, Daniel was bruised and bleeding. But alive, the heiress stepped forward, her voice soft. "I was wrong about you," she said. "You're worth more than any bag or title." Daniel looked at her, surprised. Then, with a faint smile, he replied, "Maybe we're both worth more than we think." The night outside was calm again, but neither of them knew what dangers still waited in the dark. Daniel helped the heiress steady herself as she leaned against the cracked wall inside the safe house. Her breathing was heavy, and the pain from a deep cut on her arm made her wince. But her eyes held a fierce determination that surprised him. She pulled the glowing bag closer. Like a shield against the world outside, Daniel studied her quietly, noticing the small tremble in her hands despite her brave face. The city's dangers were no longer just shadows, they were very real and very close. He knew the attackers wouldn't stop until they had what was inside that bag. And maybe her life too. Suddenly, a faint noise caught their attention, a soft tapping on the window. Careful and slow, Daniel moved toward the sound, his senses sharp, peering through the grime. He saw a small figure waiting in the dark, a child, no older than 10, with wide, fearful eyes. The child held out a folded piece of paper, trembling. Daniel took the paper gently, unfolding it to find a simple message written in hurried, shaky handwriting. "Trust no one. The betrayal is closer than you think," the heiress gasped softly, recognizing the handwriting instantly. "It's from my brother," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He warned me." "But why didn't he come himself?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Someone inside your family is playing a dangerous game," he said. "We need to find out who, before it's too late." The heiress nodded, her usual arrogance replaced by a cold resolve. She reached into the bag and pulled out a small hollow communicator. Activating it quietly, a flickering image appeared, an older man with sharp eyes and a cruel smile. The heiress's brother, a powerful figure who had once promised to protect. Her butt now seemed to be the cause of her danger. The communicator buzzed with static before the image spoke. "You should have stayed silent, sister." His voice was cold and full of threat. "Give me the bag, and I might let you live." Then the connection cut, leaving only the crackle of static. Daniel looked at the heiress. "This is more than a family fight. It's a war," he said. "We have to be smarter than they expect." She looked at him, her eyes burning with a mix of fear and anger. "If I lose this bag, everything will be lost, not just my life, but the future of my people," she said. "You helped me when no one else would. Will you help me now to fight back?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. "I don't want to be part of your wars," he said honestly. "But I won't let innocent people die because of greed and betrayal." The heiress smiled faintly. "Maybe you're not so ordinary after all," she said. Then she pulled him toward the back door. "We need to move. The hunters will come again soon." As they slipped into the dark streets, Daniel's mind raced. Every step carried them closer to the heart of danger and deeper into the secrets hidden in the glowing bag. The night was no longer just a threat, it was a battleground, and they were right in the middle of it. They moved through the shadowed streets, careful and silent, Daniel's eyes constantly scanning for any sign of danger. The heiress kept the glowing bag close, but her thoughts seemed far away, lost in worries no one else could see. The city's night air was heavy with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Their path led them to an old warehouse near the docks, a place forgotten by most but familiar to Daniel. He pushed open the rusted door, and they slipped inside. The cold air inside, stark against the warm night outside. The warehouse was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling, and crates were stacked high, casting long shadows. Daniel set the bag down carefully, then looked at the heiress. "We can hide here for a while, but it won't last long," he said quietly. "They'll be looking for us all night." She nodded, biting her lip, the weight of everything settling on her shoulders. Suddenly, a soft noise came from the corner. A small creature, no bigger than a cat, with glowing eyes and fur that shimmered like liquid silver. It stepped forward slowly, sniffing the air. Daniel frowned. "What is that?" he whispered. The heiress's eyes widened. "A shadowmath," she said. "They are rare, but they can help us." Before Daniel could ask how, the shadowmath moved toward the bag, its tiny wings fluttering. Then it landed gently on the glowing surface. Its eyes seemed to glow brighter, and a faint pulse of light spread through the room. The heiress smiled softly. "It senses danger," she said. "It will warn us if anyone comes close." As they settled in, Daniel pulled out his repair kit and began fixing a broken radio he found in a crate. The heiress watched him, her expression changing from fear to something like hope. They spoke little, but the silence was not empty. It was full of understanding. Hours passed, and the city outside seemed distant, but suddenly, the shadowmath's eyes flashed bright. Its wings made a soft clicking noise. Daniel's head snapped up. "They're here," he said, grabbing a makeshift wapona, heavy pipe ready for what was coming. The warehouse door rattled as someone tried to force it open. Footsteps echoed down the empty street outside. Daniel moved to block the entrance. The heiress held the glowing bag tight, her eyes fierce now. No longer the proud heiress, but a survivor. The door burst open, and 3 armed figures rushed in. But Daniel was ready. Swinging the pipe with all his strength, the first attacker went down with a heavy thud. The heiress ducked behind crates, but one attacker spotted her and aimed a weapon. Daniel shouted a warning and charged, tackling the attacker to the ground. The fight was brutal and fast, shadows and echoes filling the warehouse. Daniel's strength and quick thinking kept them alive. But when the last attacker fell, Daniel looked down at his bleeding hands and gasped. The heiress was beside him, pressing a cloth to his wounds. Her voice was steady. "We survived because you didn't give up." Daniel smiled weakly. "We survived because we had to," he said. "But this is only the beginning." Outside, the city lights flickered, and far away, sirens wailed reminders that the fight was far from over. Daniel and the heiress moved through the tangled streets, their breaths heavy, their bodies tired, but their spirits fierce. The glowing bag pulsed softly against her side. A heartbeat in the dark night. Danger still followed them like a shadow. They couldn't shake, but neither of them looked back. They reached the old spaceport, a place where ships waited silently like sleeping beasts. Daniel scanned the crowd, searching for a ship that could take them far away. The heiress's eyes darted nervously as figures in dark armor moved between the crates and cargo. Closing in on them, suddenly, a group of mercenaries appeared, blocking the path to freedom. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation, his metal pipe gripped tightly. The heiress stayed close, watching as this ordinary human faced death with steady eyes. The fight was fierce. Daniel moved with strength and speed, born from years of hard survival. He blocked blades, dodged blasts, and landed powerful blows. One by one, the attackers fell, but more kept coming. The heiress pulled out a small device from the bag of flare that burst into bright light, blinding their enemies for a moment, taking advantage. Daniel grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a waiting ship. The engines roared as they climbed aboard. the ramp closing behind them just as the last attacker reached out inside the ship. The heiress finally looked at Daniel fully, her eyes shining with respect and something deeper. "You saved my life," she said softly. "When I thought no one would," Daniel smiled. "Maybe you saved mine too," as the ship lifted off. Leaving the city lights behind, the heiress held the bag close and whispered, "This isn't just a bag. It's hope for my people. Hope you helped protect." Daniel nodded, looking out at the stars, "And maybe it's the start of something new for both of us." The journey ahead was uncertain, full of danger and challenge, but for the first time, they faced it together, bound by trust and the courage to fight for a better future.